For
Is
the
that
budget?
all that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I may go ahead and speak then?
Well, let's do the budget first, and
Okay.
then we'll get to it. Anybody here to speak on behalf of the budget? Mills Roads. Please state your name.
Jackie Webb, you want my address?
Yes, ma'am, please.
2216 Clifford Street, Bonifay, Florida. I really thought there'd be more people here with us being not the wealthiest county in the state of Florida, that our taxes is going up again. After reading what was in the paper, it looks like we've already been paying this, but y'all gonna decide tonight if it's gonna be permanent. I personally think that we can't afford it. I read the thing that where our students, all of the Holmes County students, is eligible for free meals, and that's fine, but somebody's gotta pay for it. And it says that we got 187,000 that the families, all these students, is gonna have that extra money to spend. But if they own a home, they're gonna be paying it in this tax. So I vote no on this proposal. We're a poor county. Look at our roads, look at everything. Our schools, besides this new one that we're fixing to get, needs a lot of work on them. My granddaughter was in Ponce de Leon the last 2 years, and that school needs a lot of work done on it. As well as, I'm sure, the elementary over there and some of the rest of them. But I vote no on this increase. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Robert Kolmetz, Ponce de Leon. I wasn't gonna say anything, but with what the lady said about the schools being in terrible shape, and Mr. Dixon shaking his head, he knew, then why don't you do something about it? They're falling down, and there's schools with blue tarps still on them, with blocks on top of them, so why don't you fix them? You've had that 1.5% money that did not go to the new school that you could fix them with, or at least work on them, and nothing's been done. Shame on y'all.
And I vote no too.
Anybody else with Mills Road budget? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing portion of the meeting and move into our regular session. Call the meeting to order and take a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move we adopt the agenda.
Motion by Mr. Johnson, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Owens. Any discussion? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Kolmetz?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson? Yes. Chair votes yes, thank you. Item 2, the public.
Sally Wright, 2306 Highway 277, Chipley. Some of you are quite tired of seeing me at these meetings and listening, or pretending to listen, to what I have to say. You could rid yourselves of me easily if only you would make lawful, just, fair decisions. Unless and until you decide to do that, you will continue to see and hear me. As I mentioned at the last board meeting, you will be asked to vote on Superintendent Eddie Dixon's recommendation that Susan Steverson be transferred involuntarily to the county's alternative school, the Gap. Let me remind you of some pertinent facts. At the May 19th board meeting, you approved her continued employment at Bethlehem High School. So what happened between that meeting and July 1st, which is when Susan received a phone call from Principal Brent Jones telling her they needed to meet regarding her placement for the next school term. I'll tell you. First, on June 16th, she came before the board explaining just how erroneous was the report presented by Dixon, wherein he touted a 95% attendance rate. I certainly hope you did not send to the state such a fallacious report, but I will be checking. Second, on June 25th, she turned in the certificate showing her completion of the anger management training and sensitivity training she was ordered to attend so that she might retain employment in Holmes County. After having met the requirements for continued employment and proving how fraudulent Dixon's attendance rate claims are, only then did Dixon resort to Plan B, as I call it, which was an involuntary transfer, hoping, I'm sure, that Susan would finally cry uncle and quit, especially since he recently promoted his own brother to the position of administrator at the Gap. A couple of side notes. Exactly when did the board vote to delete anti-nepotism rules from their county policy? Was that when Eddie Dixon took office? And does Ron Dixon even have the proper certification to be an administrator? Or does he have nothing more than a teaching certificate the same as his brother Eddie? When Dixon sent Susan the letter telling her that even though she has met all requirements for continued employment, she is to report to Gap, he also stated quite clearly that she will be transferred there when the school board meets to vote on it. Not only has he once again issued a directive that he does not have the authority to put into effect, but he also appears to know how you, board members, are going to vote before you actually do so. Does Eddie have ESP? Or have 3 or more of you met outside of the sunshine, discussed how you will vote, and told Eddie? Have the rest of you given Eddie your assurance that you'll vote along with him no matter what he recommends, whether it's lawful or not, just as Mr. Johnson has done? I suppose we'll soon find out the answers to those questions when you vote. If you and or your attorney have researched the law regarding whistleblowers and their rights, you should determine that you cannot and should not take adverse personnel action against Susan Steverson, as you will open yourselves up to possible litigation. Even if you board members choose willingly to blind yourselves to the continued harassment, discrimination, hostility, and bullying that Jones and Dixon have directed towards Susan Steverson, surely you cannot have missed those same actions toward fellow board member Debbie Kolmetz. It is shameful that not one of you has taken a stand against Dixon's brutish behavior toward Mrs. Kolmetz. I keep hoping and praying, apparently naively, that your conscience will break free of the stifling hold you have allowed the devil to place on it. Others have told me that you have no conscience, but I believe that you are capable of standing up for justice and righteousness, that you can and must put an end to Eddie's reign of terror over teachers and school board members alike. Do what is right or end up the same way he eventually will, in ignominious defeat. Thank you.
Susan Steverson, 1893 North Holmes Creek Road. On July 21st, I presented a whistleblower complaint to the superintendent and each school board member. I have since noticed an error in one date. On page 3 of the complaint, I erroneously stated that I had spoken to the board about attendance problems on June 23rd of 2015. That date should be amended to June 16th, 2015. In the complaint, I detailed what I had suffered after voicing my questions and concerns regarding the attendance policy. These concerns arose as a result of the impact that a high absentee and tardy rate had on my students and the impact these attendance issues had on my ability to teach classes and meet the needs of all students. State law clearly directs district school boards to devise an attendance policy that addresses absences and tardies. In addition, state law demands that each school track excused and unexcused absences. In August of 2014, Principal Brent Jones told the Bethlehem High School faculty that excused and unexcused absences would not be marked. This statement by the principal was an obvious defiance of state statutes. Students were not penalized for excessive absences or for excessive tardies. The punishment for excessive tardies was a conference with a student and/or parent. No penalties were incurred, certainly not in my class. Speaking of my class, in my first period English 3 class, juniors, among the 15 students who were enrolled for the full year, 7 students had more than 18 absences. 1 student was absent 31 days, another 47, another 48, another student 56, and 1 had 64 absences. 12 students were tardy more than 15 times. 9 of those were tardy more than 20 times. The student who was absent 64 days was also tardy 77 days, which means he was either tardy or absent 141 days out of 180. The impact that these attendance issues had on my ability to do my job effectively should be obvious. When I have questioned, complained, or otherwise voiced concerns about attendance, administrators have attempted to silence me with unfounded allegations of gross insubordination, suspensions, and now involuntary transfer. I have taught high school English courses at Bethlehem High School for 28 years. For many of those years, I taught honors level or advanced placement courses. I've served as English department chair for 28 years. That's right, my first year of teaching, I was assigned department chair. I served as the school's first curriculum coordinator, and I was responsible for the school improvement plan and the master course schedule for 10 years. My son is a 7th grade student at Bethlehem this year, having attended Bethlehem since pre-kindergarten. Forcing me to transfer will be a hardship on my family because my home is not on a bus route for Bethlehem. Forcing me to transfer to Gap will not enable me to continue as department chair and will not enable me to teach honors level courses. In addition, forcing me to transfer to Gap will place me in a hostile work environment because the superintendent's brother, Ron Dixon, is the administrator there. My concerns about attendance policies have impacted my classroom, my employment, and my child. Administrators have sought to silence me with repeated disciplinary measures. The Holmes District School Board can remedy this untenable position and situation by allowing me to remain at Bethlehem High School and by devising an attendance policy that includes penalties for excessive absences and tardies, and by ensuring that schools enforce the policies and abide by state laws. I have a copy of this that I've just read to you that you can keep as an amendment to what I had given you at the last school board meeting. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Abigail Watford, 1308 Gavin Road. Well, I first want to say that I recently competed in the senior beta competition at national level for my speech, and I wanted to say thank you to a couple people out in the crowd. First, I want to say thank you to God for letting me have this opportunity and my family, but I really want to thank Miss Brock, Miss Steverson, and my mom. I couldn't have done it without y'all. Thank you. I also want to say that I believe that Miss Steverson deserves to stay at Bethlehem High School because she has been my favorite teacher and the best teacher I've ever had. I don't think what has happened to her is fair, and I really hope you all make the right decision because I know you can. Thank you.
By the way, I'm very proud of you winning that state. You deserve a big applause for that.
I just wanted to know if you guys got the motion we filed today.
If you come up and speak into the mic,
Sure.
that's fine.
Excuse my address. I had a fight on a tractor with the garage door yesterday. So, did you get this look to give to the members?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
I have filed a motion today, a reply kind of to what's ongoing.
and bring some other things to your attention. I'll just pass them out if I can. Can I pass this out? Maybe I'll start some down here too for me. I've got another box of them for everybody. Should be enough to go around. I sent it to Mr. Taylor and to Mr. Harris. It was filed with DOAH today, and it's kind of a urge to resolve. I think it's a dispositive motion, and I think the next step, what they've been talking to you guys about is breach of contract. And I urge you to look at the contract. 5B, I believe, says that no employer shall harass an employee or discriminate against them or place them in a hostile work environment. You've heard everyone else. I don't have to repeat to you. You've heard a lot more than I have, but I get the YouTubes, thank you, and am able to look at what goes on. And I've referenced some of those in the motions that we filed. They're illustrative. Take a minute, look at what I wrote. It echoes some of what Sally and Susan were saying. It refers you specifically to your obligations to Ms. Steverson, timeliness. You have agreed, all of you, gave her a contract that says she would be noticed by the end of school as to where she would be. It would be posted. It was, you approved it. Now we're here again, and we're not even over with one thing before we go into another. I wouldn't throw this all at the board. I called you a patsy, and I'm sorry for that. But that's what Mr. Dixon plays with us. And I think it's really unfortunate that people see that when he says he will be. It's very, you know, you could look at it as either you guys are communicating outside of what the bounds are, or he is just making some real assumptions that you're under his thumb. And I don't think any of you want to be that.
I'd like to make a statement right here. I'd like to interrupt you. I believe if you read this where it says here in the public, if you were not supposed to say any personal acquisitions or derogatory remarks. to
Oh, I'm sorry,
anybody.
I don't mean to. I'm referencing just what I said in the motion. And that's
I
protected
think some of
speech.
the remarks you're making are derogatory. Ms. Dixon,
What would you call it, sir? If
Derogatory.
you're a rubber stamp?
Ms. Klein, if you want to make a statement, you can make a statement.
was trying
But
to.
you've got to abide by the rules that we have here on the agenda, okay? And the
I
fact,
thought I
this
was.
this isn't the place to sit here and talk about what litigation's pending. This ain't a hearing. So if you would like to make a statement, we're not gonna talk about your motion here tonight, okay?
Okay, I
That'll
just
be for a
think,
different date and a different time.
I think that there's something before you tonight that you need to know what you're doing.
Okay?
I
Well,
tried
your
to
motion that you just
reference-
handed out don't have anything to do with that.
Really?
Really, it doesn't.
I think that the contract does.
Okay, well,
I think it would be
We're not
wise
talking
for
about
you and
litigation
the others
tonight.
to look at
Okay.
that. I'm not talking specifically about the litigation. I'm talking about what's going to be voted on.
you're talking
tonight.
about a motion you filed concerning the litigation. So I don't
And
understand how you
the
think that's
contents
not
of
talking
what's
about the
arising
litigation.
from what happens tonight, Mr. Taylor. I don't know what you're going to do. I don't know what the board's going to do. But I said pretty clearly what's going to happen if she continues to be harassed. And I don't see how you can read the contract and go on with this recommendation. And if you don't want me to speak anymore, I won't. But I'd ask her to review your own contract, and that's your word. Abide by it.
I'll make a comment, please. I've heard a lot through this whole process about what the board can do. In my training, when I have gone through the duties of the superintendent and the duties of the school board, the way I understand it, Mr. Dixon does not need the approval of us school board members to transfer a teacher. Is that correct? Is that correct?
He makes the recommendation, you can either approve it or not approve it, but it's based on Florida statute.
The contract says that the board is the
Ms.
final
Clyde,
say.
you do not have permission to speak right now, okay?
Well, I think you're giving
You're interrupting.
incorrect advice,
You're
Mr.
interrupting,
Taylor.
and you need to have a seat. Thank you.
Excuse me? He hasn't read it either.
Any other comments from the public?
I'm Jackie Webb again. I can't believe what I have just witnessed. I cannot. I know most of you people. I mean, not personally, but I thought all of you was good, decent people, and y'all have just put down these people. I don't know all the situations with Miss Steverson. I know her husband since he was a young'un. I know they're good people, and I've heard students that has graduated. One graduated from Bonifay. I don't know what she had to do with him, but he said that she was the best teacher he ever had, and he's an A+ student. But I don't know. I think y'all all just treated these people out of just ugly, just ugly. Thank y'all.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to say that it is Mr. Dixon's job to recommend, but we can vote no. We can vote no on this, just like she said. I mean, I don't see why we're trying to get rid of a good teacher personally. And we can vote against something like that. I just want to say that.
Any other from the public?
I think I would like to say something too. My name is Veronica Smith. I'm 1482 Myrtle Road, Westville, Florida. I have a hard time keeping my emotions under control sometimes, and please forgive me for that. But what I have seen going on and what I've heard going on concerns me greatly. Not only are we losing Miss Steverson possibly at our school, but I have seen several teachers retire. And I understand they have that right to do it any time, but all of a sudden, it just seems kind of odd that they're all retiring very quickly in the last 2 years. And this worries me because if anybody knows what's coming down the pike, I would bet it's the teachers. They see the writing on the wall long before we get to hear about it, you know. And some of these teachers have been very good teachers for a long time. And it concerns me very much that what is happening with our school board and the good people that are in it. I am worried that either, as one person said, have lost their consciousness and not standing up before God as they know they should, because that's who's accountable at the end always. You know, you're only accountable to God for what you've done. There's nothing we can do here that'll make you do what you need to do. You know, there's nothing here we can say, but you do have to stand before God one day. You know, all of you. And if He's pressuring you unduly and causing you to do these things, I would hope that you would think that we as a community would be behind you and would support you if you would come forward and say something, that you need help. That we are, as a community of God, a God-fearing community, that's the only best way I can say it, that we would want to be with you all the way, that we would support and give you strength to do the right thing, always. And I know there's a lot of anger. I know there's a lot of hurt feelings. And maybe there is a lot of misunderstanding that we don't know what your job exactly is allowing you to do, you know. But without communication between us, we can't help either, you know. And I think, if I could say this for everyone here, we would give you that help if you needed it, the strength you need to stand against somebody who's bullying or tyranny. I'm proud to say that we do still live in a country that freedom is the course of the day. That we have that freedom still, that we can stand before and do the best that we can do together. And we do need each other as a community. And we don't want to see our community divided and destroyed.
Yes.
I hope that you know that we pray for you, that we pray that you will have God light your mind, because there's times you might not know the right decision. You can't always know everything all the time, but that with God's direction, He can help you do things when you don't always have all the answers up front. And I would hope that each of you would keep that light of Christ inside your heart to guide you at all times, that we might work as a community to be the best county in Florida instead of the worst.
That's right.
And I say so.
Anyone else? Go to item 5, administrative program. Hawkins.
This is our first public hearing on the tentative budget, and for the purpose of adopting millage rates and the budget for the 2015-2016 fiscal year. What I've just handed out to you is a document that I had not had any previous communication with you all, but we got the final certified rate that we as the school board must levy in order for us to participate in state funding. And so it is mandated that the school board levy a certain millage rate as determined by the Department of Revenue and the Department of Education in order for us to receive between 85 and 90% of our funding comes from the state, and so therefore, in order for us to get that money to operate our school system, we must levy a certain millage as determined by those two state agencies. And what I just handed out to you is something I just printed a little while ago. And you see our total revenue that is generated from the millage that is levied is determined by two factors. One is the millage rate, and the second is the assessed values of property here in the county. And when you take the millage rates, multiply it times the assessed values, you come up with a total revenue that can be that will be generated as a result of millage levy. And so you can really keep the same millage rate from one year to the next, but if the total assessed values of property in the county increase, we're going to raise more revenue. And so by state law, whenever we have increased revenue coming in, we must advertise in the paper as if it is an increase in the revenue and an increase in taxes. Even though any one particular individual may not really be paying any more tax. But as you can see there in the certified property tax values between 2014, 2015, and 15-16, we had about 11 million, approximately a little over $11 million of new taxable valued properties in the county. And when we have additional building or for whatever reason we have increased tax values in the property, and really our millage rate, our required local effort has dropped. Dropped from 5.009 to 4.941. So the millage rate has actually dropped 0.068. but the total assessed values of property for taxable purposes in the county has increased. And even though we had a smaller millage rate, we have increased the revenue within the county and therefore must advertise as such. And as you can see, the very bottom line down, assuming a person has an assessed value of $100,000 of property between 2 years, this is just a hypothetical example, that person will actually pay less taxes, $3.40 less taxes as a result of the millage rates that we've levied between the 2 years. So this particular document maybe will assist in helping us to understand the differences between the 2 years for someone who has the same assessed taxable value in the 2 years.
Mr. Hawkins, the tax rate actually went down this year.
Correct.
For levy, but the assessed values are building up possibly, and that you have nothing to do with assessed value, all that's.
It could be somebody that moved from in the county and built a house next door to you. Somebody could have increased the value of their own property by adding a building or a structure. And so these new or it could be a business that opened up a new business and built something that became, that caused us $11 million increase in the assessed values in the county. You know, what it all consists of, I don't know, but anyway, we've got a $11 million increase, and so therefore you can basically keep the same millage rate, and in this instance, a slight drop in the millage rate for any one particular individual, but due to the new assessed values of property in the county, our revenue has increased, and so the state mandates that we advertise that we had an increase in taxes in the county, merely as a result that we have more revenue coming in.
And the 1.5 capital improvement, that's not a permanent increase, that's year to year.
That is correct. And of course, we, as a county, agreed to levy this so we could receive, once again, a tremendous amount of money coming from Tallahassee for the construction of the new school. It was our local participation in order for us to receive the state grants for the construction of the new school. The mandate, and for the first time in all the schools, the previous 3 schools that we have built, we had to put the entire 1.5 toward the, or 2, depending on which year it was. It started out 2 meals years and years ago, but came down to 1.5. We were fortunate that we did not have to commit the entire 1.5 toward the school, but we were able to keep it for local purposes here. But yes, that is correct.
Is that a 3-year commitment, the 1.5? I know we have to approve it every year, but
yes.
Is it a 3-year or 4-year?
It's a 4. You have to have it in place before you can ask for a new school, and then it has to be in place those 3 years. And they've changed the law now, it's going to be in place 3 years before you ask for a new school. They've actually changed it. They did that last year.
So the county has been fortunate in that for 2 of the years that the legislature has just passed again in the Appropriation Act, as I previously indicated, the statute has not been rewritten, but they in the appropriation bill, it said you don't have to do what the statute says. You don't have to put the entire 1.5 toward the school. We'll allow you to keep 0.75 for your local purposes. And as to whether or not, and this in the Appropriation Act is to sunset July 1, 2016. So next February or so, when the legislature begins to meet again, they will determine what will happen in 16-17, whenever, I believe the next 16-17 is the 3rd year of committing monies, as to whether or not we will be able to keep any of those monies in the 16-17 year.
Mr. Hawkins, do you foresee that after the 3rd year or 4th year is up, we'll still be using this 1.5 bill to help keep us afloat with the way the budget is now?
Well, that would be a decision the board will have to make as to whether or not they
But
choose
as far
to.
as the figures go, if this 1.5 goes away, are we going to be able to pay our debts and keep everything like it is?
Well, it's difficult to know what other funding may come from through the FEFP, the regular packaging. Yes, the money certainly would be helpful in the operation of the school system. But we've had some increases in the last couple of years, and in the FEFP, the Florida Education Finance Package. So
a lot of factors come into play. You know, what are we going to do with salaries, and what, you know, are we going to have other increased expenditures? And, you know, and obviously, you know, the 1.5 would be very helpful as far as operational purposes. But you know, but I know traditionally it has been levied for the most part. You know, when we have built schools, but that's a decision for the board to make after what 17, 18, I guess.
I wasn't here at the last workshop, but did you say that the utilities are gonna be higher at the new school than they were at the old school?
Well, it's difficult to say exactly. I know historically, we have always had an increase in utility costs when we have built new schools. Well, you take, for instance, Bethlehem, you know, it probably was a school built back in the 40s, 1940s or thereabout, and probably had a lot of window units, and maybe certain sections, if there was no one in the classroom, they may have not turned the window unit on. Then you build a new school with square feet, and you're heating the hallways, you're heating, you know, well, our utilities went up for Poplar Springs, went up for every school. Ponce de Leon, Holmes County High, Bethlehem. I may have said 3 schools, we've been 4 schools already, so Ponce de Leon, Holmes County High, then Bethlehem, then Poplar Springs. And historically, yes, it's been several years ago, but I did an analysis of each one of the schools. I probably have a graph somewhere, but we have had a significant increase in utility costs when we have built a new school system. Whether or not this will occur here, and whether or not the heating and air conditioning arrangement out here is going to, you know, what impact it's going to have, whether it will remain the same or increase. It would be tough, I probably suspect, to keep it the same, but, you know.
What recommendation from Mr. Hawkins?
Okay. First thing we need to deal with is the resolution for the tentative millages, and you have a copy of the resolution there, and the increase over the rollback rate. And these are the rates, millage rates that were advertised in the paper, and we would ask for the board to adopt the resolution for the tentative millage rates.
Heard the recommendation, we have a motion.
I move we approve the resolution to adopt the tentative millage rate for 2015-16.
Motion by Mr. Johnson, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Justice. Any further discussion? I will say, hopefully, we're trading 2 schools for 1, so maybe that will help us some on our 2 old schools. Maybe that will help on the utility cost.
Has anyone done an analysis at Gulf Power?
Analysis,
I'm sorry, we have a question?
Can I just ask if anyone has done an analysis? Gulf Power will do those. I don't know who the supplier is. Is it West Florida?
No, go
We're in a good position to where we can either use Gulf Power or West Florida. Which I
It'd be
think
interesting to know if there had been an analysis of the utilities.
to ask the power company out to conduct an analysis of a structure which we're trying to finalize the plans, maybe kind of difficult for them, very likely to come up with an accurate determination as to what the utility cost will be when we're just trying to get the plans finalized, and they would probably need the very particulars, may need an entire set of plans, square feet, you know, all the years. So that might be a difficult thing for them to do right now, I would suspect.
We've got a motion by Mr. Johnson, a second by Mr. Justice. Any further discussion? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Kolmetz?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Thank you. Item B.
Next, we come to the resolution to adopt the tentative budget for the 2015-2016 year. And once again, the millage rates that are mandated by state for us to receive state funding. And then this is the budget that is associated with those millage rates. And so we're requesting based on the proposed and tentative budget that was as was advertised in the paper, be accepted by the board.
For the recommendation from Mr. Hawkins, do we have a motion to adopt the tentative budget?
I move we adopt the tentative budget for 2015-2016.
A motion by Mr. Justice, do we have a second? Second. Second by Mr. Johnson. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Kolmetz?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
One final thing, you don't really need with me, you got a copy of it. Resolution for our final budget hearing. We can conduct it, let's see, I have another one extra here. It's very simple. Basically, it would be on a regular meeting day, September 15th, that keeps us from having to shift our meeting date. But we could have, maybe the board will adopt a resolution to have our final budget hearing on September the 15th, which is a regular board meeting. I've left a blank there for the time. If you want to have it at a regular 6 o'clock time, it just needs to be after 5 o'clock. So I'll leave that up to you all to determine. If you want to just leave it at a regular board meeting time, you can just insert in your motion the time that you would like to have there, either 5:05 or 6 o'clock, or whatever time you choose.
Pleasure, board.
Make a motion, we change the hearing on September 15th, board meeting to 5:05 p.m. for the final resolution for the final budget hearing.
Motion by Mr. Johnson to set the final budget hearing for September the 15th at 5:05. We have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Justice. Any discussion?
Would we do a workshop, that's usually our day, a workshop, so we do an earlier workshop or a later workshop?
You go what? Do a workshop at 4? Any other discussion? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Kolmetz?
Do we have a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Who made the motion?
Mr. Johnson? Mr.
Okay.
Justice, second.
But we didn't have the time when you made the motion. So the time is going to be at
5:05.
5:05 and 4 for the workshop. Yes.
Mr. Johnson? Yes. But yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Item C, personnel handbook.
Okay, we've got, first I have a flash, there's no change anything to it.
Could you please speak up just a bit or speak into the microphone?
Sure. Okay, we've got 3 changes made to the personnel handbook. First change is on page 6 of disciplinary. We added a description of what progressive discipline is under that section. On page 21, under insurance, we added a hospital indemnity of $250 per day. That's a change in our insurance policy, so that was kind of required by that. And the last thing, we changed the website for our billing report form. It's now located at a different website than it was. That's on page 28.
Okay.
We changed our websites for the schools. We switched to a different company, and so they had to change the actual address of it.
And there's one on page 1, which is just a date.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's fine. But I recommend we accept these changes to the personnel handbook.
Further recommendation, Superintendent, on the personnel handbook. We have a motion.
I move we accept the 2015-2016 personnel handbook.
Motion by Mr. Justice. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Owens. Any discussion?
Yes, I have a question on the cell phone usage. I know a few meetings ago that it was voted that the students could keep their cell phones on, and this says that the teachers are not allowed to use them except for during their planning period. And enlighten me, please, on what we did as far as the cell phones. I know we had a meeting and y'all said everybody voted except for me. I voted no against the cell phones being on during the day. And the student code of conduct book says that they'll be left off during the day.
Well, the teachers are paid employees, and they're not allowed to have them be using them while they're teaching. They can use them on their planning period at lunch, that kind of stuff, but they're not supposed to be using them during their teaching time.
But this was sold to us as a teaching device, and the teacher would be teaching with her cell phone.
Well, if a teacher was using their cell phone in a teaching mode, I'm sure that's fine. And some
It
of them
doesn't
do.
say anything about it in here.
Well, this addresses more their personal use of their cell phone, not so much instructional use. Instructional use is covered by, under the code of conduct, or the BYOD policy, bring your own device policy.
It's- Unless you are on an emergency standby or some other special circumstances, leave cell phones turned off during class time. So it doesn't say that you can turn it on to teach if you're gonna use it as a teaching device. I would say you needed to look into that and we need to discuss it. If it needs revision.
Well, again, being, employees are different than students. They're paid to work 7.5 hours a day, and that's why that's there, so they're not using their personal cell phone. Because if somebody's the old teacher, they call the schools, they all have phones in their room, that's not an issue. So they have another access point.
There is one statement that says personal calls or calls unrelated to school business are prohibited except in
Right.
emergency situations, like a personal call.
And any business would do that.
I think what Ms. Kolmetz is saying, though, it doesn't specifically say that she can turn their cell phone on, even if they're teaching with it.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, if you're gonna have it, if you're gonna say it one way and do it another, you gotta have it uniform across the board. In my opinion, they can't teach if you leave it like this with their phone, because that's what it says. It doesn't say that they can turn it on for teaching with their phone, just emergency.
Is it mentioned in any other material about them being able to utilize their cell phones
Well,
for instruction purposes?
The BYOD policy talks about instructional use for iPads, cell phones, those type of things. So the assumption we made in that policy that teachers can use them for teaching purposes also. The personal handbook deals with their personal use, like you don't want teachers chit-chatting during the day, they're supposed to be teaching. I mean, that's the kind of thing we need here to keep that from happening, that's all.
And if we are allowing them to use them for instructional purposes, I mean, we just do need to make sure that it's covered.
Sure.
You know,
And I think
We're
that,
asking them to sign this, too, so they have to sign it.
I mean, we can add another line to it that says unless it's instructional purposes, that's not a big deal. And we
Well,
have
I make a motion that we table it until we get it corrected and vote on it at the next meeting.
We have a second motion on the floor to table the personnel handbook until second meeting and a workshop at 4 o'clock.
I say,
Motion by Ms. Kolmetz, a second by Mr. Johnson. Any further discussion?
On page 6, that step forward disciplinary action, when was that? Was that
That
changed
was
from?
a typo from the first time. It was supposed to be without pay. Because suspension with pay is not a disciplinary action at all. That's something that you do in order to investigate an allegation.
So it is without pay.
Yes, it is.
Any other discussion on tabling the handbook? Ms. Owen?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
yes.
Ms. Kolmetz?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson? Chair votes yes. We
Mr.
still have a
Chairman.
motion on the floor concerning the approval. I'm sorry.
I also have another question on page 33. It says our tobacco policy, that we're strictly against tobacco, but why don't we have drugs and alcohol in there for teachers? I mean, we've got it for students. Why don't we have a policy for drugs and alcohol inside their personnel book? Because
On page 1, it talks about a drug-free and alcohol-free workplace for employees. That's the bottom of page 1.
mean, is it expanded somewhere else to say what what are the consequences of if there were drugs and alcohol?
That's under board policy 6.33.
So it refers back to that. Thank you.
Yes. On the first motion, Justin, withdraw your motion, just want to approve.
Yes.
And Ms. Owens, second, withdraw your second.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to item D, contract with chemical addictions, Ms. Bush.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask the board to approve the contract with Chemical Addictions Recovery Effort to provide educational services to our students for drug and alcohol prevention for the 2015-16 school year.
Heard the recommendation from Ms. Bush, we have a motion.
This is the same price as it was last
Yes,
year.
ma'am.
What was the price?
No, they didn't increase it. 3,900? Yes.
I make a motion to approve. Motion by Mr. Johnson, we have a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Justice. Now, any discussion?
Is this something now that is mandated we provide? Is this
Required by the
it's
state.
required by the
Provide this
state?
instruction.
Okay. And is pretty much the setup and the schedule for this upcoming year the same as what they did last year?
Yes.
Any other discussion? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Kolmetz?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, thank you. Item E, student handbook.
I'd like to ask that you approve the student handbooks for Holmes County High School, Ponce de Leon High School, and Poplar Springs.
Heard the recommendation from Ms. Bush. Have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve these three handbooks.
A motion by Ms. Owens, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Justice. Any questions or discussion?
I have a question. Why does Bethlehem not have a student handbook?
Each school can choose to have a handbook. A handbook is in addition to the code of conduct. Some of the things that are in the handbook could be more restrictive than our code of conduct. And these are the three schools that choose to have a handbook in addition to the code of conduct.
Any other questions or discussion? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Can I say something back here? Why in the county-wide do they all the same?
The handbook is countywide.
Code of conduct.
The code of conduct is countywide. The handbook is just an addition. Each school can choose to have one or not. It's in addition to what the county has directed throughout the county. Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Kolmetz?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Item F, Mr. Price.
Mr. Chairman, Board, I bring before you the 2015-16 dual enrollment articulation agreement with Chipola College. Dr. Roberts has highlighted in there the changes that the legislators have asked to make as far as the price per student hour, per semester student hour, I guess I should say, has remained the same at $71.98.
For the recommendation from Ms. Price, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Kolmetz, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Owens, any discussion? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Kolmetz?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, thank you. Item G, dual enrollment.
Same thing, Mr. Chair, Board, the 2015-16 dual enrollment articulation agreement with Northwest Florida College. The changes that the legislator has required has also been made in this articulation agreement, and the price will remain the same at $71.98 per student semester hour.
For the recommendation, do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Johnson, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Justice. Any discussion? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Kolmetz?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson? Yes. Chair votes yes. Thank you. Item H, Master and Service Plan.
This is the 2012-17 Master and Service Plan. There's been 3 revisions made in the English Language Arts, the Instructional Leadership, School Principal Level 2, and the Technology in the Classroom, Digital Curriculum. What they've done is with the Professional Development Council that we work with PAC, we're going back and making it more detailed of what is expected in the in-services. And so it's just been broke down. It has a checklist of the priority of initiatives in it, the impact areas with it, and more details about the evaluation of the attendees that attend the professional development. We will go through the in-service and update all the different areas in the in-service, but these are the 3 that were updated for this school year.
For the recommendation from Ms. Price, do we have a motion?
I move we approve the AEC Master and Service Plan.
Motion by Mr. Justice, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Owens. Any discussion?
So this is kind of what is offered to all of our
Yes.
our teachers throughout the year, that they can attend these.
Now, not everything that is in there, but when we have a training or PAC offers us a training, this is what we go to find what areas are covered in that training, what to code that training to for the professional development points that we report to Tallahassee.
Any other questions? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Kolmetz?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 9, agreement with Tri-County Community Council Head Start. Ms. Eudora?
I ask for the board's approval of Tri-County Head Start provide speech and language services to eligible students.
For the recommendation, Ms. Eudora, do we have a motion?
I move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Johnson, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Owens. Any questions?
And this is what we do over again. Is it Westville?
Westville Head Start.
Westville, right.
Any other questions?
There hasn't been any changes to it as far as, it's all basically the same.
Any other? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Kolmetz?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Item J, agreement with Accelify for Medicaid services.
I ask for the board's approval with the agreement with Accelify for Medicaid Services. They provide the website, they provide professional development and technical assistance.
For the recommendation, do we have a motion?
I move to approve.
Got a motion by Mr. Johnson, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Owens, any questions?
How's this working out with Accelify? I know this is
It's been
the
excellent.
second year, or?
This will be going into our second year.
Going into our second year.
Yes, sir.
And is the cost the same
Yes, sir.
as it was last year?
Any other questions? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Kolmetz?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, thank you. Okay.
Okay. We had contracted services bids. The first one is the teacher of visually impaired and orientation and mobility. My recommendation is to use Emerald Coast Blind Ambitions, which is Pat Wilson, and I ask for the board's approval.
For the recommendation, do we have a motion?
I move we approve teacher visually impaired and orientation mobility with Pat Wilson.
Have a motion by Mr. Justice, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Johnson, any discussion?
Yeah. Why did you specifically use this one? Choose this one?
I'm recommending Ms. Wilson because she has worked in our district for at least 7 years, and she has established a positive relationship with our students and with our families and outside agencies.
Do we have an idea how many hours were utilized?
It's no more than 20 hours, I believe, per month. I'm sorry, 20 hours per week. And we have 7 students who are visually impaired.
ask how many students do we have?
Now, and a couple of those students are on consult, so she would just be in contact with teachers once a month.
What's the difference in therapy and tablets?
The therapy and the edu-health care,
Yeah.
those are recruiting companies. They would have to recruit someone where Ms. Wilson is available with Florida certification.
Any other discussion?
So these other two don't have the certification, or?
Well, they would have to recruit, and there's no guarantee that they could find somebody.
I think they had a problem last year. The year before that. One or the other.
Year before last.
Any other questions? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Mr. Kolmetz?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Thank you.
The next bid that we contracted for were behavior intervention and counseling services. My recommendation is to use Spectrum again this year. The rates were the same.
Heard the recommendation from Mr. Tork. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Johnson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Justice. Any questions? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Kolmetz?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last one is physical therapy. My recommendation is for Exodus.
I noticed that their bid is almost twice as high as the next bid.
Once again, there's no guarantee that they could find someone to recruit, and the physical therapist and the assistant, it would be the assistant that would work mostly in the district. We have 10 students that would need direct therapy. Once again, those other companies, they're recruiting companies, so there's no guarantee that they could find someone.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation. We have a motion.
Yeah, I move to approve it.
Motion by Mr. Johnson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Owens. Any discussion?
I'm concerned with the cost also being double. Trying to cut corners as much as we can and still give the services to the children. I mean, if they couldn't find someone to work in this area, what would you do if you went with one like this?
Well, this is a guarantee they have the physical therapist. My concern would be that the individual educational plan says that we must provide that service. So we have to do everything in our power to make sure those services are in place.
So there would be no point in re-advertising?
There is that possibility we could.
How many students do we have utilizing the service?
10 students, which is, most of them are 30 minutes a week, which would equal to 5 hours per week.
So with the edu-health care, they do have a provider that we could use if we went with them?
None of the others could guarantee that they had a provider.
That happened, like I said, that happened to us 2 years ago.
We thought we had someone,
That's
and then
right.
that individual moved to Japan.
Any other questions or discussion? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
I recuse on this vote.
Ms. Kolmetz?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7, consent agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the workshop and regular session minutes and the invoices.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Mr. Justice. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Owens. Any discussion? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Kolmetz?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson? Yes. Chair votes yes. Thank you. Personnel actions. Superintendent?
Okay, my recommendation is the following. Hire Nathan Castaneda at BMS, Leanne Yates at BES, Amy Chestnut at BES, Kendall Walton at Potsdam High School, Zachary Marks at Holmes County High School. Amend Heather Bailey from teacher to guidance counselor at Potsdam High School. Accept the resignation from employment on the following: Jenny Bales, ESEA at Bethlehem High School. Barbara Johnston, aide at Potsdam Elementary School. Transfer Susan Steverson, teacher at BHS to the Gap. The teaching position at Potsdam High School that was vacated by Ms. Bailey to Holmes County High School for an ESE inclusion teacher. And hire the following wings personnel: Popper Springs, that's the only school we've got listed. Melissa Whitledge, Barbara McSwain, Janice Trim, Deborah Jones, Brad Hall, Teresa Snell, Lacey Brown.
For the recommendation, we have a motion.
Move to approve the superintendent's recommendation.
Motion by Mr. Johnson, we have a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Justice. Any discussion?
Yes, I have a question. We're moving Ms. Bailey from teacher to guidance counselor.
Correct.
So is her position going to be dissolved, or are we going to?
Basically, we're closing it at Potsdam and bringing it to Holmes County High School because we've had a huge increase in ESE inclusion population there. Well, I mean, a huge, like 20 children.
And how many coaches do we have? See, this is assistant football coach. How many coaches do we have at Holmes County High?
No boy. For just football, for everything, or?
For football?
Football will be 6, 1 head coach, 5 assistant coaches. Baseball 2, softball 2, basketball 2, girls basketball 2, volleyball 1, golf 1. I think that's it.
So we've got one
He's
head
not-
coach
he's-
for football?
Correct. He's not being, and 5 assistants. This guy, he's been hired as a teacher. He's on coach also.
And we have 5 assistant coaches?
Always have had for a long time.
And we're gonna have 6 now?
No.
This-
Still have 5.
5 assistants.
There's
One
5.
head coach, 5
Yeah, that's
assistants.
correct.
And I'd like to say on the Susan Steverson, I think we should not be moving her, a teacher that's been there 28 years, and who's gonna teach her job? Are we dissolving the English position?
They've got it covered in their schedule.
So you just transferred someone within to do English there?
There are other English teachers there.
So they're combining her classes?
But again, they work their schedule out this summer to accommodate.
Well, I urge every board member to search their heart, because I am totally against moving our good teachers and possibly losing them, and I don't know why we're moving her to the Gap when she's an English teacher at Bethlehem.
Can I say something too? Bethlehem's principals have six different principals since my daughter. Bethlehem is so fragile. Please, board, please.
This was voted on May 19th. Did you read? It was voted on.
We're public comment.
Excuse
Where are we
me,
at on,
can your attorney say something, like give you advice?
where are we at on positions, overall positions, after the hires and the transfers and retires? Do you know where we're at?
We're break even.
We're still the same as what we were? Yeah.
Any other discussion? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Kolmetz?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Item 9, federal plate program. Ms. Bush?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask for the board's approval for the BPK provider contract with Early Learning Coalition.
For the recommendation, Ms. Bush, do you have a motion?
I move we approve the 2015-2016 DPK provider contract with Early Learning Coalition.
Motion by Mr. Justice, to make a second. Second. Second by Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Kolmetz?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Chair votes yes.
Thank you.
Item 10, present to you the item Form 8B, voting conflict. Entertain a motion to approve. Move to approve. Motion by Mr. Johnson, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Owens. Any discussion? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Kolmetz?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Comments, Mr. Superintendent?
Just that we had a really good start to school today. I know we're all going on our tour on Friday, so let people know that. And tomorrow, we're having all the teachers at Holmes High School for a comedy service for everybody. So I checked everybody there, things were really good, so really smooth.
What time is that tomorrow? At Holmes High?
Starts at 8:30, I think. 8, I'm sorry, 8.
Ms. Owens?
No comments.
Mr. Justice?
On the new school, Mr. Dixon, we're just still in kind of a
They
formative phase?
delivered 100% plans today.
Okay.
We have 100% plans as of about 4 hours ago.
So those just have to be
Yes.
reviewed?
The county will look at them, the city will look at them a little bit, and then we'll move forward. That's where we're at right now.
Ms. Kolmetz?
Yes, I'd just like to express my disgust with the board for voting against, for keeping her, putting her at the gap, Ms. Steverson. You have my heartfelt, my heart goes out to you, and I want to keep good teachers, and I just don't understand how the board can vote against that, against you moving.
Are there any ethics workshops that maybe some of you can attend? Superintendent, perhaps?
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
Motion by Mr. Justice, we have a second. Johnson? Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Kolmetz?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson? Yes.
Taylor, on behalf of Ms. Steverson, I'm asking to the trial. I'm asking for compliance with the